I'd like to walk you through the solutions for one example of Gateway 1 exam. So let's start with this first one. And we see 0.5 divided by 1/2. Well, first we're going to convert that 0.5. 0.5 is really 5 over 10, and 5 over 10 is really 1/2. So they're asking you 1/2 divided by 1/2. And that's equal to 1, just as any number divided by itself is equal to 1. But if you'd like to go ahead and apply that division sign, this one comes down for the ride, 1/2. Division sign turns into multiplication. You multiply by the reciprocal. There are 2's in common, so you divide out across those two, denominator and numerator. They each become 1, so you get an answer of 1. For this next one, we've got 3 to the negative 2. If you remember our discussion in class, this is really 3 to the negative 2 is really over 1. And so that negative exponent says it wants to be moved to the denominator, and that exponent becomes positive. So you get 1 over 3 squared. Well, 3 squared is really 3 times 3, which is 9. So you get 1 over 9 as your answer. For number 3, it's an absolute value problem. That means we have to simplify what's inside the absolute value bars first, then we take the absolute value. So let's start with 18 plus negative 29. That's really 18 minus 29. Or find the difference in the size of those two, and the larger one is negative. So it's negative 11. That negative 11 goes inside. So it's plus 18 minus 29, the guts of the absolute value here. Then when you take the absolute value, that number becomes a positive, and you remove the bars. So you get just 11. Now, let's take a look at number 4. For this one, we have an order of operations where we've got negative 20 plus 2 numbers multiplied together plus a number divided by another number. So most of you remember PEMDAS, but it's not just everyone taken by itself. It's parentheses, exponents, then multiplication and division together. So we're going to go across this and do all multiplication and division at the same time. The negative 20 comes along for the ride. Negative 2 minus 3 is positive 6 because a negative times a negative. And then 8 divided by 2 is 4. Now we have a negative, plus, and a plus, and addition and subtraction are commutative if you just consider them each to be terms within parentheses. That means that we can take the 6 plus 4 and get positive 10, then negative 20 plus 10 gives you this negative 10 as a final answer. And here we have negative 10. For the next one, we have 6 sevenths minus 7 ninths. This is one of those cases where we do have to find the LCD. So over here, the LCD is 63. It's 63 because 7 and 9 have no factors in common. Oh, how do we do that? We need this 7 to become a 63, so we have to multiply it by 9. But you can't just multiply the denominator by 9. You have to do 9 over 9, which is 1. And so 7 times 6 is 63. 6 times 9 is 54. Then on this one, 9 times 7. For this guy, 7 times 7 is 49, and then 9 times 7 is 63. We multiply by the 7 over 7 because the 9 here is missing the 7 to get you back to the LCD. Once you have common denominators, you can subtract across the numerators. That denominator comes along for the ride, and the numerators then become part of this new fraction. So 54 minus 49 is 5. 63 comes along for the ride, so 5 over 63 is your answer. For the next one, we need to find the equivalent of 9x plus x over 2. For this one, we see here we have two different terms. All of these answers have single terms, so we're going to have to combine them before we can even go over here and examine which answer we would like to keep. So 9x is really 9x over 1. different denominators need an LCD. They have nothing in common, so the LCD is 2. This one already has a 2 in the denominator, so it comes along for the ride. This term needs a 2, so how do you get that? Multiply by 2 over 2 so that this 2 times 1 becomes the new denominator. 9x times 2 is 18x. Now we have like denominators. We can add across the numerators to go from this step to this step. We take 18x plus x is 19x to give you 19x over 2. You take a look at all the choices, and there's only one here, so the answer is B. Let's look at number 7. You have w plus 13 squared. Whenever you see anything with an exponent, that exponent means how many copies you're going to have. So we're going to have 2 copies of w plus 13. 1 copy, 2 copy. Now we're going to multiply, and we can use FOIL, which is really just the distributive property. So w times w, w squared. W times 13, 13w. Now take the 13 here and distribute it. 13 times w, 13w, 13 times 13. So 13 by 13, it's okay to do that work on the side. You get 169. Now we're going to collect like terms. W squared, only squared term, comes along for the ride. 13w plus 13w is 26w. So you have 13 of something plus 13 of something, and that gives you 26 of that something, which is a w. And then the 169, which we found over here. Our final answer is w squared plus 26w plus 169. Looking at number 8, which of the following expressions is equal to this term? Well, we've got single numbers. Here it's separated into terms. And so let's separate that numerator. If you had something looking like this, you would add the numerators to go backwards to the left. So we can break up the numerator. Remember, we discussed in class, you cannot do that with the denominator. So here we get denominators, both x here, 9 here. Well, x over x is just 1. 9 over x can't be simplified, so you get 1 plus 9 over x. Go to the next one, number 9. The classrooms at University Tech used to have 20 seats. After the renovations, the classrooms have 36 seats. By what percent did the number of seats, will the number of seats have increased? Well, this is the percent increase, so we need the number that it has risen, that's the increase, over the original number. Well, they don't tell us how many it increased, but we can figure that out because there are now 36 and there used to be 20. So 36 minus 20 means we have 16 more seats. That means the number of increase is 16 and goes in the numerator. The original number of seats is 20, and here we have 20, because this question is asking by what number of seats, by what percent will the number of seats have increased? And so that's why we are doing the number of increase over the original. Well, to get a percentage, we need it out of 100, so 20 times 5 is 100, 5 times 16 is 80. This is out of 100, so this gives us 80%. Sure, you could simplify this to get a fraction, but you have to have a percent out of this because they're asking you what percent to the nearest percent. So you're going to have to get that denominator over to 100. For number 10, they're asking us to just simplify this. So we're going to take this coefficient here and distribute it in. There is just a negative there, but that negative means -1. So -1 times 2x, -2x. -1 times -4, +4. So you get the first binomial comes for the ride. This you get from that distribution. Now we're going to collect like terms. 8x minus 2x is 6x. If you can do that and skip this step, by all means do that, as long as you're always correct. But if you tend to make some errors, you should move them around first by commuting the terms. So 8x minus 2x, that gives you the 6x, and then the 3 plus the 4 here give you 7. Final answer, 6 plus 7. Now we're moving to solving equations. We've got variables on both sides. We're going to have to get a variable on one side, but first we have to collect like terms on the left. So 6y plus 5y here is 11y. Negative 9 plus 8 is negative 1. Again, you can skip this step if you can go right to this one. So on the left we have 11y minus 1. On the right it just comes along for the ride. So now you need to get that variable by itself. To do that, subtract 7y from both sides. Over here they add to 0, so all you have left is the negative 8. And then on the left, 11 of something minus 7 of something is 4 of something. So that's 4y. The negative 1 comes along for the ride because we're not doing anything with the constants. Now to get that variable term by itself, we need to get rid of the negative 1. So we do the opposite. Add 1 to both sides. These add to 0 here. And then on the right, negative 8 plus 1 is negative 7. We still need to get that y by itself, so divide by that coefficient. Because this is multiplied, we do the opposite. And when you do that, the 4's divide out, and you get negative 7 over 4. And this is a y. He got cut off at the bottom. Y equals negative 7 over 4. As we talked about in class, you may also write that as a mixed number. Now, we're solving this equation, and this one is simple compared to the one we did on the last page. All we have to do is get this variable by itself. So divide both sides by 6. The 6's divide out, and you get just x equals 9. Now we need to evaluate. They give us a value for each of the variables. So x equals 5, so the 5 goes in for the x to get 2 times 5. No variable here, so just minus 5. In the denominator, 3z plus 4y. That means 3 times this, 8, plus 4y, which is 4 times this, y equals 9, 4 times 9. So that gives us 10 minus 5 over 24 plus 36. Simplify each part of the fraction, so you get 5 over 60. Now 5 over 60 can be simplified because there's something in common. If right away you can see what's happening, you can do that dividing out here. But if you have trouble dividing out common factors in the numerator and denominator, then you can go ahead and factor each. So here, 5 times 1, because 5 is what in common to both the numerator and denominator. 5 times 12 is 60, so that means we get to divide out the 5's, and we just get 1 over 12 here. For the next problem, we have simplifying again, so we have this expression minus this one. Remember that negative 1 is really a minus 1. The first terms come along for the ride because the coefficient here is just a 1, so these are all the same. And then minus 1 times minus 7w squared, positive 7w squared, negative times positive 1 is negative 1. If you're going to make an error, it's going to be right here. And then now you can move terms around so you can collect like terms. Negative 5w cubed, there's only one of that term, so that comes along. W squared, there's 2, so we add them together. 7 plus 1 is 8w squared. And then 13 minus 1 here is 12. So our final answer is 5w cubed plus 8w squared plus 12. Our last problem is another percentage problem. And for this one, here's this initial information. This company, the shares have fallen in value by 30%. If the original value of the stock was $80 per share, what is the current value of the stock? So the original value, they tell us, is 80. They're telling us a 30% decrease or 0.3 drop, and so we multiply that original by 0.3. That tells us that our shares have dropped by $24. What is the current value of the stock? Well, it's the original minus whatever it lost to get the current. So what we lost was the decrease. We found that here. So 80 minus 24 equals 56. So that's it. Hope you're having a great day, and I'll see you around the math department.